The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month.
What happens when a smug TV host collides with a governor who looks like he's still searching for his car keys? You get Greg Gutfeld shredding Tim Walz into confetti like a cardboard cutout tossed into a hurricane. From disastrous policies to clumsy political theater, Gutfeld spins Minnesota's leadership into a comedy routine that feels less like a debate and more like a demolition derby. Don't blink. This roast burns colder than Walz's frozen approval numbers, and every second hits harder than the last.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
Oh, Tim Walz. If political leadership were a buffet, he'd be the lukewarm mashed potatoes nobody asked for, yet somehow ended up on the plate anyway. Bland, unnecessary, and still sitting there. Then comes Greg Gutfeld's sarcasm, like a chainsaw dropped into a fireworks shop, tearing through Walz's blunders with the intensity of a comedian in overdrive. This isn't governing, it's performance art, and not the good kind, more like finger painting, with spoiled mayonnaise. Messy, awkward, and impossible to forget.
He exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, 0.2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
If you are enjoying this takedown, please hit that like button and subscribe us. Now, let's be honest. Tim Walz running Minnesota feels like watching a substitute teacher try to control a classroom full of caffeinated raccoons. He talks like someone who skimmed leadership for beginners and decided that was his entire strategy. And the execution, remarkably precise. If the goal was to turn the land of 10,000 lakes into the land of 10,000 disasters...
I saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Greg Gutfeld didn't even have to break a sweat. Roasting Tim Walz is like dunking on someone who showed up to a job interview wearing Crocs and a blindfold. It's as if Walz walked onto the debate stage armed with a kazoo and a whiteboard scribbled with nothing but the word feelings. He practically begged for it, serving Gutfeld a roast platter labeled extra crispy, then leaning in as if to whisper, "This is competitive sarcasm," and Walz arrived with nothing but glitter glue and a participation ribbon.
Walz is a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
No, he's a strange guy.
Strange.
He called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, "My house is being surrounded by people with American flags." I said, "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" He said, I think they're going to attack me. This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. You know, they like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, how do you know? There were about 15,000. He said, could you put out a word like that I'm your friend? I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before Truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement. He's a good man, the governor. He's on our side. I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
Let's start with the economy. Tim Walz looked at inflation, unemployment, and businesses fleeing the state and somehow decided the answer was more taxes. Tax the air, tax the smiles, maybe even tax the thought of moving to South Dakota. Companies are bolting from Minnesota like it's a haunted house built from climate mandates and endless social justice slideshows. And then Gutfeld tore through Walz's economic blunders like a raccoon ripping open a compost bin, practically shouting, how do you make California look like a capitalist paradise by comparison? Because under Walz, the only things growing are government paperwork and the pounding headaches of the middle class. Now on to crime. Tim Walz treats public safety the way a toddler treats matches. Optimistic, clueless, and destined to end in sirens. His grand strategy? Blame society, hold hands, and hope criminals are moved by interpretive dance. It's like handing out scented candles in the middle of a burning building.
On the same bad cocaine, but Kamala can't speak, he can't speak, Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show. And I said this in the 5. He's a clown without a circus.
He doesn't even need makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for? Yeah. I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months from now.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld is out there turning crime statistics into punchlines. He practically held up a map of Minnesota stamped with "Here be carjackings" across the Twin Cities, comparing Walz's crime plan to a mall cop trying to stop a riot with a kazoo and a clipboard. If Walz were in charge of national security, the country would be brushing up on Russian by next week. And then came education, an absolute glittering dumpster fire. Walz, a former teacher himself, somehow decided classrooms should be turned into workshops of trendy word salad. Forget math and science. Students are now graded on spotting microaggressions and building safe spaces out of popsicle sticks. Gutfeld didn't just mock it, he unloaded, saying the only test students are passing is how to be offended. Under Walz, schools look less like places of learning and more like stages for bad performance art. Detention is gone, replaced by participation trophies and TikTok-style therapy sessions.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the difference?
And let's not forget the COVID policies. Tim Walz treated the pandemic like a personal audition for America's next top authoritarian, shutting everything down, dragging bar owners into court, fining churches, while protests were suddenly declared essential. Apparently, the virus came with a political filter. Gutfeld feasted on that hypocrisy, pointing out how Walz shut down Grandma's bingo night, but threw the streets wide open for demonstrations as long as there was at least one Marxist chant and a papier-mâché puppet in the crowd. That wasn't public health, it was political theater with a clipboard. Then came the budget surplus. Minnesota was sitting on a mountain of extra cash, so large even Walz couldn't pretend it wasn't there. But instead of returning it to the taxpayers, the people who earned it, he burned through it like monopoly money at a government. Garage sale, more bureaucracy, more consultants, and maybe even a taxpayer-funded mural of himself staring off into the distance.
As that Walz lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. Humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every...
Gutfeld nearly collapsed from the irony. He joked that Walz blowing a surplus is like handing a toddler a credit card and trusting him to buy only the essentials. Sure, Tim, because the Department of Overregulation clearly needed a shiny espresso machine and an executive yoga retreat, all in the name of equity and bureaucracy. Walz has turned red tape into a full contact sport. In Minnesota, you can't even run a lemonade stand without 14 permits, a background check, and a pronoun declaration. It's Soviet-style governance with slicker branding and even worse results. Gutfeld nailed the image, painting Walz twisting through policy like he's auditioning for bureaucratic gymnastics, each move more absurd than the last. And then there's his strange fixation on Gavin Newsom, Walz clinging to California's governor like a starstruck fan determined to turn Minneapolis into San Francisco's colder, clumsier cousin.
Tim Walz vomits more nonsense.
I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Maybe it's an adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. This is a weak, cruel man that takes it out and punches down on people.
Wow. Oh. Jamie.
What a
Painful,
douchebag,
huh?
Greg. That was absolutely painful. He was the keynote speaker at this conference. Can you imagine having to watch more of that?
He watches Gavin Newsom torch California like a scented candle made of bad policy and thinks, perfect. Now let's add frostbite and subtract jobs. It's the West Coast disaster script, just performed in snow boots with higher taxes and fewer opportunities. Gutfeld went in for the kill, saying if Gavin Newsom is a shampoo commercial with the ego of a Bond villain, then Tim Walz is the understudy who wandered in halfway through and started improvising in Pig Latin. Walz struts around like the confused offspring of Bernie Sanders and a malfunctioning traffic light, posing as a progressive savior while tripping over every agency he touches. And transportation, don't even start. He pitched a multi-million-dollar bullet train that might be ready around the same time dinosaurs return. Meanwhile, Minnesota's roads look like a post-apocalyptic Mario Kart course, with drivers praying their suspension systems survive the week. But Walz is too busy selling fantasy trains, like he's auditioning for Hogwarts, while real infrastructure crumbles like gluten-free toast.
So the tone of the media was one of sadness, not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!" It's no wonder they don't do follow-up questions with Democrats. They're like the top layer of day-old skimpy bean dip. What's underneath, you don't want to see.
And Gutfeld rolled his eyes so hard they nearly registered on the Richter scale. The sarcasm was so thick it deserved its own zip code. Brilliant plan, Tim. Dump common sense in the trash and pour billions into Elon Musk fan fiction on rails, because nothing screams fiscal genius like a bullet train to nowhere, slower than a DMV line and about as useful as a solar-powered flashlight in January. Then came Walz's media appearances. Picture a man cosplaying as a capable leader while speaking with all the clarity of a dial-up modem underwater. He drones in endless circles like a GPS permanently stuck on recalculating, while offstage his advisors wave flashcards and fire metaphorical flares, desperate for him to land a single coherent point. Gutfeld shredded it mercilessly, turning every clip into a punchline. Watching Walz explain policy is like seeing a raccoon attempt Morse code with oven mitts. Chaotic, confusing, and somehow still convinced he nailed it. It's not just awkward, it's verbal gymnastics no one asked to witness.
Meanwhile, Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain? I don't see that as a problem, said one woman.
And when the pressure hits, Tim Walz doesn't just pivot, he pirouettes like a ballerina powered by 5 energy drinks and a subscription to The Atlantic. Ask him about crime exploding across Minnesota, and suddenly he's rambling about how bike lanes will somehow reduce felonies. Mention the economy circling the drain, and he shifts into a sermon on gender-neutral parking lots and the emotional toll of asphalt management. This isn't leadership, it's interpretive policy theater, complete with TED-style talks on feelings and PowerPoints about healing communities through ukulele circles. Gutfeld skewered it perfectly. Walz is basically a magic 8 ball in orthopedic shoes. Shake him and the answer is always the same muddled jargon about intersectional frameworks or equity gardening. And then there's the branding. Walz struts around like a down-home farm dad, but his version of roughing it is sipping almond milk without a paper straw. He's the guy who shows up to a tailgate with kombucha, asking if the brisket is locally sourced. Gutfeld roasted him with surgical precision, saying Walz is about as folksy as tofu at a monster truck rally. Nothing screams working class hero like quoting Noam Chomsky in a fleece vest.
Video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird. I've seen warmer embraces between Chris Christie and a salad.
Minnesota's rural towns are crying out like someone stuck on hold trying to cancel dial-up in 2025. They wanted a leader who understood their lives, tractors, real work, maybe a church potluck or two. Instead, they got Tim Walz, a man who seems to think greater Minnesota starts at the edge of a bike lane and ends where the kombucha taps run dry. This isn't leadership, it's lifestyle branding stuffed with extra buzzwords. He governs like he's live streaming a TED Talk called Empathy Through Bureaucracy. Gutfeld's knockout line landed hard. He crowned him the IKEA governor. He comes in a box, half the screws are missing, assembly required, and by the end, you're staring at a wobbly mess, wondering if you accidentally built a metaphor. And he wasn't wrong. Walz treats policy like a Pinterest board, convinced governing is just hashtags, oat milk, and interpretive dance. Gutfeld saw through it all with X-ray precision. Every bloated bill, every word salad speech, every sanctimonious sermon masquerading as leadership. He dismantled it with sarcasm sharp enough to cut steel, turning Walz's oatmeal-flavored brand of governance into a pile of soggy mediocrity. The saddest part? Walz probably walked away thinking it was a TED Talk tribute. Minnesota deserves more than a glorified group project in khakis. And Gutfeld, armed with punchlines sharper than a DMV pencil, reminded the nation that behind the fleece vest and that passive-aggressive grin stands a governor reading expired IKEA instructions, confused, underwhelming, and missing half the screws.